Yes, thank you very much. And thank you very much to the audience for your time and interest. Yes, I'd like to give you a short overview about our view of the evolution in the space of application security, and to share with you our approach, how we defeat application fraud, and in addition, how we can optimize the customer experience in these kind of scenarios and areas. So a lot of you, I think, have never heard about Shape, and why is Shape on the market, why we are there. The general thing is that everybody is aware that automation and the automation compromise web and mobile traffic. So it's more than 40, 50, 60%. Depends on the study you read. Automation traffic, fraudulent traffic are also in this traffic. And yes, Shape has a mission to protect web and mobile applications against these kind of abuse. So our approach is that we aim to deliver and is not only security, not only fraud protection, we also want to deliver a better customer experience, so a better customer journey for your audience, for your customers, on all applications that are protected by Shape. So what we're really doing is, our focus is the number one, mitigation of synthetic fraud. Synthetic fraud is automation, so it's more than a bot. A lot of people think that Shape is only a bot vendor like all the others, but it's much more. Second topic we focus on is also the mitigation of human fraud, because the idea is, and the experience we have is that we are now able, if we get rid of synthetic fraud, let's focus on human fraud activities to mitigate it. And of course, all is combined with the vision to offer a friction-free login experience. I know that topics like multi-factor authentication will be discussed in this meeting or this session, but we'd like to share with you our approach. And in addition, we are now able to deliver you an additional new device identifier. So it's not a cookie, it's really a device identifier where you can leverage additional optimization in your customer journey process or to profile a device. Yeah, we are in a business since 2011. We mainly protect, or on average, 4 billion transactions per week, and this is a business where we are in as Shape company. So what is our view on the evolution of application security? The thing is, how we see it and its experience, and it was a main driver for the founding of Shape, is that there are more and more attackers around that they don't breach the systems, that try to act like a legitimate user. And because they are able to use tools and technologies to really simulate a human being. And for a lot of customers, it is not easy anymore to really identify, is this a real traffic, is this a real interaction, or is this a fraudulent guy, or is this an automation that claimed to be a human being? And why has this happened? One source for this shift, I would say, in the application security approach is the big amount of stolen credentials that are available and around. There is a good source for everybody that want to have a look what is really available. There is the Hasse-Plattner Institute that give us a real-time indication about the stolen credentials on the market. And really interesting is that since COVID-19, this is of course jumping. So more and more identities are now available on the darknet for sale. And in addition, this is not only a topic, I would say, for the global market, it's already a topic for Germany, because the credential stuffing topic was mainly a topic in the American market. But I did analyze some data from Hasse-Plattner and found out already that we have here with the German .de extension, because I cover the German market, that was the reason for this research, that we already have the availability of 267 million stolen credentials. So username, passwords, pairs are available for cybercrime activities. I think it's a really big and impressive number. The other reason is that there is this evolution of attacks to simulate a human being are tools that are now available in this market, because automation is not a new topic for all of us. And I think every company or a lot of people in our audience already take action to identify automation or to identify bots. So they use homegrown tools, they use WAF technologies, they use other, I say, bot mitigation approach. But the challenge is, of course, the evolution of attack, because the motivation, we call it the value behind the login, is always there. And there are always attackers around that like to really bypass these countermeasures. And the challenge is that these is more and more now easy to do because there are tools around. I don't know if you ever heard about Sentry MBA or capture solvers, but there are a lot of tools around that make it really easily to start simple. So to start with a script, to use Sentry MBA and do a called credential stuffing, so validate username passwords, for example. But there are also tools around to bypass capture, tools to steal fingerprints, or the latest tool we have really did our research on is the Browser Automation Studio, where you are now really able to make a copy, for example, of Mario. So you can create a second Mario and can hide yourself behind this identity. So it's really tough in these times to identify the sophistication of automation and attacks. And this combination of stolen credentials and technologies make it really easily to change also the attack pattern, or I think the attack methodology that you attempt. So it's easy for attackers to change IP addresses, you block IP addresses, but then they change ASN information, they change geolocation, and this can be done really fast in minutes or in seconds, I would say. It depends on the ambition of the attacker to overcome your countermeasures. And that is not only in theory a topic, it's also a real topic. I give you here an example of a German customer. And it's really nice to see what this picture shows is the login interface of an application. And what we see on the top row is that, number one, the technologies are now able or enable an attacker to really hide in the human traffic. So they blend in really in human traffic interaction. And what we see on the second row is that it's now easily to change the attack pattern. We call it attack, by the way, a campaign. And what we have seen here on the customer side is that on a Friday evening, they jumped up and attack, and suddenly he try automation. We call it credential stuffing, so validate username passwords. And suddenly he run really into 20% of the traffic of automation for the login. And when you figure out that it's not needed to do IP rotation and other ambitious leveraging ambitious technology, he changed the attack pattern, used only one IP address, but ramped up the amount of credentials that he wanted to validate. And this is a real example, German company. And as you can see here on the time window, the change took only 24 hours to went from one attack strategy to another. So how is now, what is the biggest challenge now? As every good industry, and this is also, I think, the challenge in this evolution of attack, more and more, I would say, cybercrime eco environments are available. You can think of a kind of like an automotive industry, where for an attacker it's not really easy to get stolen credentials on the dark web. A lot of them, by the way, are for free. And also to get easily cybercrime tools that are mentioned, like Sentry MBA or others, combine these tools, rent a botnet, and then simulate a human being. And this is on a big scale, and you can try it on every website because it costs more or less zero or nothing to do a credential stuffing attack, to aim for an account takeover. But also a big topic for, especially for e-commerce and retailers, is the scraping. So where really people do spy out your environment to do price comparison or to find out other competitive information to make them more competitive to you. And of course, in other industry, it is a topic about fake account creation. So if you think about loyalty points, where people create fake accounts, collect the loyalty points, and sell them on the dark market. So this is a really change and shift, I would say, in the attack surface, that these guys are now working like in a distributed industry, and it's really hard to catch them and also to defend this. So where does it really occur? So the main topic that we are focusing on as Shape is the login protection, or the protection of the password, because there is the scenario where we see, or our customer sees, the biggest value behind the login, because you can do an account takeover, you can compromise private information and also abuse online services. But there are other use cases around where the people use these sophisticated attacks and simulate a human being in the search environment, as I mentioned, account creation, and also very often in loyalty points and or checkout, where they try to validate stolen credential cards and information. So this is mainly the use case where we see this evolution of attacks happening. And this is the area where Shape is focusing on to protect this. And for people that want to know more about it, about the threat level, I would say, about the urgency, if it's an urgency in our market at all, I like to recommend to read the latest Riesen report, because there are really good insights about the evolution of the threat landscape, of course, but also a good background information why stolen credentials are more and more a threat in our industry. And I think it was an impressive number that in the latest report, they identified that 37% of all data breaches around the globe really rely on this ambition to use credential stuffing attacks. But also for the German audience, there are, I think, some good content around. You will find really good stuff on the Heise Online environment or IT Daily Net, where the information is done, of course, in German available, and also gives you some good examples what is happening in the German market. Yes, as I mentioned, what is the motivation about it? It's a fast ROI. So because of the distributed cybercrime ecosystem of the available tools, you can start with a handful of euros. This is, of course, dollars, but a handful of euros. You can start easily an attack. Try it out, for example, on a favorite e-commerce site or another telco site or travel site, and to find out what kind of data you can compromise, what kind of account takeover you can execute to, one, steal personal identity, and of course to add value to your stolen identities and sell it again to the black market with a higher value because of confirmed information and confirmed private data information. So I think this topic is not really not new for a lot of us, and there's of course a discussion. Yes, I know all about it, but we have capture. And as I mentioned, capture could be a solution, but capture can be bypassed, as I have shown before. And our approach is to reduce friction. And every company needs really to think about, do you want to add friction? Do you want to add capture to the customer experience? Or do I want to enable speed and convenience to be more competitive? So I think capture, of course, is an option, but as we mentioned, it's easy to bypass. And it's not only bypassed by technologies, it's also bypassed by services. So there are services around. There's a website called Death by Capture, where you can easily start, I would say, to solve one captures only for $1.39. So it's cheap and easy. These services are outsourced to areas like Vietnam or other low, salary countries, where you can easily enable the services integrated via an API, and yes, capture is bypassed. So capture is not really an answer. And I was not listening the full morning, but I heard that multi-factor authentication was a topic. And of course, I agree, multi-factor authentication is a good approach to stop credential stuffing attacks or to stop automation, because you add an additional challenge, but still, it depends on the industry where you want to add this friction, like a MFA. This is, of course, a mandatory thing in the banking environment, but there are still tools around, because there is evolution of attacks, like a tool like Motlishka. I don't know if you have ever heard about it. It's an environment. It works like a reverse proxy environment where you can collect tokens, you can collect other information, personal information of infected device, infected by malware, and have a portal to bypass multi-factor authentication and take over an account easily. So really smart tools around. And please, if you're interested, follow the link on the presentation. It's really an interesting video how this tools is act and available. Another tool I think I like to mention is here the approach of a company or for a marketplace like Genesis Digital Fingerprint Marketplace. So every time there's evolution around and more, it's not easy really to quantify, to find countermeasures against these tools. And especially Genesis is a big topic in America because this tool is a tool where infected devices deliver identities. So you can more or less rent a bot with a stolen identity. So it's a single identity where you get the fingerprint, the cookies, the login, the passwords, everything of this stolen identity for sale on the market, including an update service. So even if I change my password or I change some other parameters on my machine, if my device is still infected with this malware, this marketplace get updated, and it's really easy to these guys that leveraging this marketplacing to sell identities, fingerprints, and things like that. And so it's hard to combine this then also with human interaction, because now I'm able to steal identities, to take over accounts fully automated, and then I use click farms or other human interactions to cash out my stolen information. So these are challenges, I would say, that it's really hard to quantify and hard to identify. So a lot of people think, okay, we know about it. We invest in new technologies, for example, like a WAF. We add new countermeasures in our fraud detection, or we add new parameters in our identity verification. But the thing is that all these solutions are based on rules. And if you imagine, if you simulate a human being, it's tough for a rule-based system to identify a legitimate traffic that is in real time a malicious traffic, because I act like a human being and I act legitimate. And our approach to identify or to defend this kind of challenges is our approach to leverage only telemetry signals. So we don't use PI data, we don't use browser information, we only collect telemetry data on the client side. We combine this with behavioral analytics and then build models, predictive models with AI and ML technologies to define countermeasures to identify in real time an interaction. So every post-get interaction get really be monitored or questioned by Shape. Because our approach is to authenticate a malicious behavior on three main questions that we ask every interaction. Because if an interaction is lying to us, then it gives us an indicator that this interaction is potentially malicious or need to be stopped or blocked by a Shape environment. So what we're doing in every interaction is, are you a human? So is this interaction really executed by an automation, or is this executed by a human? What kind of interaction do I do? So is this a good intent of my interaction, or are there anomalies, I would say, that indicate that this is a bad interaction? And of course, is the environment it claims to be? So it looks like an iPhone, but in real it's a machine that is acting on scale on my account. So all these questions will be asked in every interaction, so every post-get request, to identify, is this a legitimate interaction or is this a malicious behavior? And as I mentioned, so if we identify lies, then we can define this is a bad or a good traffic. So this is, I think, a totally new approach to act on behavioral analytics and not on static and rule-based analytics anymore. So what we really collect for people that are interested in this, number one of the key indicator for us are header pattern information. So we take a look to the header, how it's ordered, things like that. This is a common thing also for a lot of companies. If you do a kind of manual log analysis, you identify the log files, you take a look, is there an indication of bots? But this approach, if you do it manually, of course, is always too late to act on. But the big competence that we bring in is, as I mentioned before, the collection of telemetry data on the client side. So we interrogate always the environment. We interrogate browser information. And it's not a fingerprint, a simple fingerprint. It's really environment signals that we collect. So screen size, plugins, and we challenge, of course, the browser. Here, a short example. So, for example, how do you render an emoji? So every browser render a emoji differently. So this is one of the challenge. But we have more and more, say, the secret source and IP or shape-specific parameters that we leverage to really identify, is this a real device? Is this repeating activities? Is this the environment it's say it is to be, or is it a bot? And of course, but not last, we take a look to the human behaviors. So it's not all about what you are keying in, it's the classification and identification how you key it in. So what are the keystrokes? What are the mouse movements? What is the attempt? How fast, how slow? What do you copy and paste? Things like that. So all these parameters we collect and combine to identify the activity. And in addition, this is not only done for automation. We have developed our system also to make it capital, to options new capabilities to do it also for manual transactions. So what we learned on automation is now available on manual interaction on the application. So what is the copy and paste operation? What is the mouse movement? So the same methodology that we have leveraging to identify automation is now also available for manual fraud detection. And this will enable us, or has enabled us, to deliver now a platform, not only an anti-automation platform where you can act on real time, it's a bot or it's a human traffic. This now has enabled us to use this telemetry data and experience to also to add additional value for our clients. For example, we call it Shape Recognize, where you can now identify shared devices or single devices to improve login experience. So, for example, session extensions, things like that. So it's number one, you get rid of automation. Number two, you qualify your end user devices. You kind of profiling the environment.
Mario, sorry to interrupt you, but we are running a little bit out of time.
Okay,
perhaps one last sentence to wrap up, and then we need to move on. Sorry for that.
Yeah, the last sentence. So what we have enabled over the time is a platform to offer you bot mitigation, get rid of synthetic traffic, expand user experience, and now also manual fraud detection. So if people are in the audience that have interest beyond IT security into fraud prevention, it's also an option now to talk to Shape, because we're leveraging these smart telemetry data and behavioral analytics to identify it in real time. That's it.